When it comes to the fate of NBA players and organizations, there is not a single day more important than draft day. In this one single 24-hour period, a team can set itself up to be a future dynasty or a bottom-feeding lottery team. Speaking of the draft lottery, this is a system that enables the bottom 14 teams in the league to have some hope for a first overall pick, meaning there's a serious element of luck and randomness to the draft. The thing is, the NBA lottery has not always existed, as it was only introduced to the NBA in 1985. Before that, let's just say the draft system was a lot more interesting. Between the years of 1966 and 1984, the first overall pick in the NBA draft was actually determined by a coin flip. No, I'm not joking. The way it worked was that the bottom team from each conference would be involved in a coin flip, and whoever won the toss would get the first overall pick. The loser of the toss would get the second pick, and then the remaining teams picked in inverse order of their win and loss records. While this system was in place, it has some drastic effects on the course of NBA history. The greatest example of this is the 1979 NBA draft, that involved a coin flip between the two worst teams in the league, which were the Chicago Bulls and the New Orleans Jazz. But the thing is, the Jazz previously traded away the rights to that first round pick, meaning in reality, the coin toss was between the Bulls and the Los Angeles Lakers. As the coin was up in the air, Rod Thorn, the general manager of the Chicago Bulls, called heads, but it landed on tails, meaning the Los Angeles Lakers got the first overall pick in the 1979 NBA draft. They would then use that pick to take Earvin Magic Johnson. As for the Bulls, they would take Dave Greenwood with their second pick.
Who?
Now you might think this is a reason to laugh at the misfortune of the Chicago Bulls, who could have got their hands on the great Magic Johnson. And I'm sure they felt terrible about it for a while. But in hindsight, if they won the toss and took Magic Johnson, then they immediately start winning a lot more games. Meaning by the time the 1984 NBA draft comes around, they're nowhere close to the third overall pick, which naturally means they're not in a position to take Michael Jeffrey Jordan. So again, I think they're more than okay with missing out on Magic Johnson. Now the question for today's video is, what if the NBA actually kept this draft system that awards a team with a first pick based on a coin flip? I think it's a very timely question, considering the fact that the NBA is currently dealing with the issue of tanking, so the current lottery system has naturally come into question. Well, obviously, if the NBA never got rid of the coin flip system, the league and its history would look completely different than the way we know it today. If that system remained in effect, then the butterfly effect beginning in the 1985 NBA draft would make it completely impossible to assume where players would go beyond that season. Because if there's different players in different places starting in 1985, then that means the standings would play out differently in every preceding season as well. So again, it's impossible to know for sure. But what if we simply took that system and applied it to each individual season with the standings as we knew them? Or at the very least, we could theorize that that was the season where they reintroduced that system. That could give us some fun food for thought, and have us reimagine the ways these careers easily could have played out. So let's start with Patrick Ewing in the 1985 NBA draft. It was very clear that he was the most coveted prospect heading into that draft. But although the New York Knicks won the draft lottery in reality, they were not actually one of the bottom teams in the conferences. The two bottom teams were the Golden State Warriors and the Indiana Pacers, meaning under the coin flip system, he would have headed to one of these two teams. Now it's interesting to picture Ewing play out his career as a Warrior, but it's absolutely fascinating to picture him as an Indiana Pacer, especially because that was the team he had an intense rivalry with as a Knick. Now consider this, Ewing and the Knicks didn't have a winning season until 1988, and Reggie Miller was taken by the Pacers with the 11th pick in 1987, meaning that if Ewing was on the Pacers instead, it was very much in the realm of possibility that they could have still taken Reggie and paired him with Ewing. And just imagine that superstar tandem causing havoc in the playoffs in the 1990s. Another interesting draft would be 1992. In reality, Shaquille O'Neal was taken first overall by the Orlando Magic, who were actually the worst team in the Eastern Conference at that time, so maybe this would still have played out the same way. But on the other hand, the worst team in the Western Conference was the Minnesota Timberwolves. So there's a universe where they win the coin toss and they get Shaquille O'Neal with the first pick. This would significantly hurt the chances of the Wolves getting Kevin Garnett 3 years later in the 1995 draft, seeing how they took him 5th overall. With that said, the Wolves really did suck at the time they would have taken Shaq, as they won less than 22 games in every season between 1992 and 1995. So at the very least, there was a decent chance that they're in a position to take the big ticket as well. And if that happened, that obviously would have been a terrifying duo in the 2000s, as arguably the greatest 4 and 5 combo in NBA history. 1997 also would have been fascinating. As we know, the San Antonio Spurs luckily won the draft lottery, and were able to pair the big fundamental Tim Duncan with a veteran David Robinson, which was the early foundation of their eventual dynasty. But the Spurs were actually not one of the bottom teams that year. Those were the Vancouver Grizzlies and the Boston Celtics. Now let's be real, there's not much upside to Duncan playing in Vancouver, as they had an abysmal roster. But Duncan in Boston would have enabled the Celtics to build a championship contender in the years where they otherwise struggled. I highly doubt they're in a position to take Paul Pierce 10th overall in the following NBA draft, because Tim Duncan was a top 5 MVP candidate even as a rookie. But regardless, if Duncan started his career in green, I have no doubt that the gap between the Lakers and the Celtics in total titles would have been much greater in the Celtics' favor today. 2003 also has some intrigue, as the Cavaliers took LeBron James 1st overall, and they were in fact the worst team in the conference. But the other bottom team was the Denver Nuggets. Either way, LeBron is going to be dealing with an uphill battle trying to win a championship with an organization that had never got one. But still, picturing James starting his playing days in a competitive West instead of the East is quite interesting to ponder. The 2007 draft saw the Portland Trailblazers take the injury-laden Greg Oden with their first pick, while the Seattle Supersonics took the future league MVP and NBA champion Kevin Durant with the second pick. But it was actually the Boston Celtics and the Memphis Grizzlies who had the worst records. If the Celtics get the first overall pick, then they never trade that first-round pick to land Ray Allen, and instead use it to take Greg Oden, who ends up becoming an injury-laden bust anyway. This scenario really sucks for the Celtics, because not only does Oden not work out, but they also never construct the big three that enabled them to win the championship in 2008. On the other hand, if the Celtics get the second pick, then they use it to get Kevin Durant. With KD's obvious upside and potential, I don't think they ever trade him to acquire Ray Allen, but they still would have had all the same assets required to land Kevin Garnett, meaning the Celtics still form a big three, but now instead of Pierce, Garnett, and Allen, it's Pierce, Garnett, and Kevin Durant. Not only do I think this Celtics roster still wins a championship, but a young KD also vastly extends their championship window, which theoretically could have resulted in some epic playoff battles between LeBron's Big Three Heat and Kevin Durant's Big Three Celtics. 2008 would be a very intriguing draft as well. In reality, the Chicago Bulls lucked into getting the first overall pick despite slim odds, and even LeBron James has publicly questioned the legitimacy of that result. The two worst teams in the league at the time were the Miami Heat and the Seattle Supersonics. Both of these scenarios are absolutely fascinating, to be completely honest. If the Miami Heat get the first pick, then they obviously take Derrick Rose and pair him with a prime Dwayne Wade, who was just starting the best seasons of his career. They would certainly develop into NBA championship contenders in a less competitive Eastern Conference. But there's also a scenario where LeBron James still joins them in the summer of 2010. But now, instead of a trio of LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, it's LeBron, Wade, and Rose. Now, if the quote Sonics get the first pick, then they'd be pairing Derrick Rose with Kevin Durant right as they're making their move to Oklahoma City and becoming the Thunder. Because they would take Derrick Rose first overall, they couldn't take Russell Westbrook fourth overall in that same draft. Obviously, due to Derrick Rose's health issues, the Thunder's championship window shrinks with Rose instead of Westbrook. But there is a chance that KD, Rose, and Harden would have been an even better fit together. And who knows, maybe they actually win a championship together in their youth. I could go on and on about some of these hypothetical scenarios, but these are some of my honorable mentions of where the first overall picks could have ended up if the coin flip system was in place. Let me know in the comments section which scenarios you find the most intriguing. I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comment section below. Shout out to the members for supporting the channel, and thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.